Day 2 of the Cheltenham Festival to be previewed now with my main men from the SBK podcast, Ross Millar, James Millman, Tom Collins. We've already got all 7 winners of the Cheltenham Festival from day 1. So we'll head into day 2. The 130 is the Ballymore Novices hurdle to be run over 2 mile, 5 furlong. Again, slightly like the Supreme, it just all revolves around if Sir Gerhard goes here or not. The betting as it stands suggests he will. He's 9-4 favourite. And Ginto 47-10. Dysart Dynamo, you'd imagine, will go to the Supreme if Sir Gerhard goes here. He's 36-5, along with Journey With Me. Stage Star, best of the British, according to the betting, is 38-5, and 3 Stripe Life 31-2. So I'll come to Ross, to you first. As we were saying, from day 1's perspective, this is all about, whether will he, won't we, Sir Gerhard, does he go into this race? But if he does, how do you feel? Do you think that Paul Townend, tactics-wise, it's a very different race for him in his head to pan out, or do you think, like we've heard from James, he's pretty bomb-proof?
Yeah, I like him, and it's as you say, where is he going to go? You think if he comes here, you wouldn't know whether they're coming here because they think this suits him better, or because they're desperate to separate them out and they can't see this suiting Dysart Dynamo. That's the issue. I think it might allow him to jump better. Just going half a gear slower might just help him find a rhythm, because he didn't jump all that well last time. He's an Irish point-to-point winner over 3 miles, but never sort of put too much weight on that because they can crawl for the first mile and a half and sprint for the second mile and a half in Ireland. So the pedigree is generally pace, but champion bumper winners do tend to show stamina later on in their career. So I wouldn't be against him. I can see the logic of it. But the fact that we don't know where he's going to go, I've come down on Manella Kakuna, easy to say, from the Willie Mullins yard. I was really impressed with him last time. He had them all at it a long way out, and then they closed up, and you fully expected him to fall in a hole, and he quickened away, took 4 lengths out of them on the home turn at Leopardstown on the bridle. I think he was perhaps coming to the end of his tether over, that was 2 miles 6. I wouldn't be with him if he goes up to 3 miles, but 2.5 miles, I think he's quick enough, and he jumps really, really well. And I think Danny Mullins will keep the ride. I'm a perfectly big fan of Paul Townend, but I think Danny Mullins is superb, particularly tactically. And I think if he is allowed to get his own fractions in front at a bigger price, I think he's a really interesting contender.
So considering he's a shorter price, it sounds to Albert Bartlett, are you just sort of hopeful rather than confident that he'll actually end up here?
Oh, I mean, not even hopeful, Jess. It's William Mullins. You just don't know. But I would be against him over 3 miles. He's quite keen. He wears a hood. I couldn't see him having the profile for that race, but I've trained a few less winners than Willie Mullins, so I'll let him decide.
Well, on this podcast, TC was trying his best to tell Dan Skelton where and not to go, and I think it's worthwhile sometimes listening. So let's see if Manella Kakuna gets there. As you said, the hood was interesting. It did help him last time, but he's quite a free-going sort, and he's another one as a novice that you wonder whether the atmosphere of Cheltenham could get to them. It's always very interesting. James, I feel like I know where you're sitting with this, considering you're sort of just waiting and watching to see again what Willie Mullins will do.
Exactly, and he does like to surprise, doesn't he, Willie Mullins? So I'm not going to fire the markets too strongly because nobody knows. Either way, like I say, I'm happy what race he chooses for Sir Gerhard. He's the easier one out of the 2, Dysart Dynamo to swap around. I think Ross actually made a good point. Is he going to run Sir Gerhard in the race that suits him best, or is he going to shuffle the pack according to what he's got in the yard? I did wonder, Sir Gerhard, Rachel Blackmore perhaps could ride him maybe if he went for the Supreme or whatever, because obviously Paul Townend can only ride one of them. But whatever race he goes for, I'm very, very happy with Sir Gerhard. I haven't really actually looked for an alternative, to be honest, in the Ballymore, whether if he didn't go there, I've got no particular strong conviction about any of the rest of the field, because the markets for both the Ballymore and the Supreme, it's kind of which one chickens out of the Supreme and ends up going for the Ballymore. It's got a good chance. So Gerhard, whichever one he goes for, I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah, it definitely looks like the weaker alternative. And if Sir Gerhard turns up with 9-4, I know it's uncertain, but 9-4 as it stands, it's definitely going to get shorter if we're come Sunday, when we'll at least know the Supreme declaration. So it's worth taking that little bit of a risk, especially if you're as confident as James is. But Tom, Journey With Me, a horse that I thought was going to be a lot shorter than the price he is now earlier on in the season, but it was quite a laboured effort last time out. He's obviously got the Henry de Bromhead link in. We've already talked on day one podcast. You're hoping he's going to have a pretty good day, but this is the horse you had a lot of faith in, especially earlier on in the season after he won at Leopardstown over Christmas. What are your thoughts on him now?
Yeah, well, immediately after the 2021 Cheltenham Festival, I was asked in my former role to put up one horse for 2022, and that horse was Journey With Me. He was around 25-1 for the Ballymore then. And I received some cop actually on Twitter from people saying, no, he's going to go to the Albert Bartlett. So I hope those guys aren't anti-post punters. Otherwise, they would have lost their cash. Journey With Me so far this season, he was great first time up, not so great last time. But first time up, he beat two sharp sorts in Manila, Crooner and Kilcrut, both of whom are grade one novices. Last time up, it was more of a workman-like grinding out the success, but that was good enough for me. I think that was a nice little prep race. Obviously, you'd love them to go and win by 20 lengths on the bridle, but it doesn't always work out that way. Look, I'm scared of Sir Gerhard, but I'm already on at 25-1, so why would I tip Sir Gerhard now? Got to stick with Journey With Me.
Yeah, well, fair enough. If you're already on him at that price, that's pretty nice. He's a horse by Marla, who I've written an article about in the Paul Ferguson guide about the fact that he's never had a Cheltenham Festival winner as a sire, which is quite surprising, coming from the Coolmore big National Hunt band of good National Hunt sires, and he is a very good National Hunt sire. Just a Cheltenham Festival winner has passed him by, but I've got confidence that with him and another horse that we're going to talk about a bit later, American Mike, that voodoo might be off. I thought that he's been given a tough time for that run last time. I think he just had no choice but to just go on with things under Rachel Blackmore, who knows how to ride and win this race as he did with Bob Ollinger, and I think he's just gone down the Bob Ollinger route, hasn't he? As well, winning the same race that he did this time last year, the one that caught your eye, Tom. So yeah, I wouldn't be too put off Journey With Me at 36-5, but as we've all said, it's all about what happens to Sir Gerhard. But we will head on into the 210, the Brown Advisory Novices Chase. Again, a bit of what will happen to which horse, where they're going to go. There are plenty of options still left undecided. This race is the 3-mile, half furlong novice chase. The Turners is the other option for plenty of these horses. And Galloping de Champs, it's been, what will he be doing? But reading in between the Willie Mullins preview lines, it looks like he's slightly favouring the Turners over the slightly shorter trip. Although that he possibly could be seen to really good effect over this trip. But Brave Man's Game for Paul Nicholls, he's pretty much a certainty to be running here. He's the current 11-5 favourite, possibly on the back of his words. Ahoy Senor has been confirmed. He's 29-5. L'Homme Presse for Venetia Williams, who's also uncertain. He's 38-5. So again, Ross, it leaves us with a uncertainty at this stage. But if Brave Man's Game, Galloping de Champs, Ahoy Senor, L'Homme Presse all turn up, where would you be picking?
Oh, if that happens, wouldn't that be amazing? I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. Galloping de Champs, I'm just a huge fan of, and I hope he comes here. I think it's going to help his jumping. I'd be a bit nervous about him going 2 mile 4 round Cheltenham. He does just look a bit brave sometimes, and I just wonder going a gear slower whether he might just be, Paul Town might be able to get him into the boards at the first couple and just get him to back off and settle. So I think if he runs here, I think he'll win this. I think he's a superb horse, but I like L'Homme Presse. I like Ahoy Senor, but his jumping around Cheltenham, I'm just not convinced. I mean, he's not a clumsy jumper. He's a clumsy lander. He just doesn't get his feet organised on the landing stride. And so he lands okay, and it's that first stride. He just seems awkward and cumbersome, and if shifting out to his right would be a concern for me. So given that we don't know what's going to run and at the head of the market, the one that I'm keen on, I think will definitely come here, and at each way price, is Beacon Edge. He did really well to win the Drinmore. I mean, he was out the back of the telly and flew home over 2.5 miles, and then was just touched off last time from Farouk Delaine at Navan in the 10-up chase. He was trying to give him £7, and he only just failed. He has good form around Cheltenham in the Stayers Hurdle. He'll love the hill. And I think he's a big price for a horse that's almost certainly going to come to this race, given that we don't know L'Empress, Galopin Des Champs, where they're going to go.
Yeah, 19-1 for Beacon Edge. It's very tricky at this stage, as Ross has said, to work it out. It could really be. I can't see what would turn Willie Mullins. Galopin Des Champs, James, he's looked pretty explosive. Can you sort of see from Willie Mullins' mindset why it's been? I know that Willie Mullins just likes to do this, make a decision right at the last minute, but can you see anything sort of swaying him one way or the other for the Brown Advisory or the Turners? I
agree with Ross really, and that he'd find it a little bit easier, but I just wish there wasn't a 2.5 mile option at the festival. You imagine how exciting it would be if you're talking about all of these basically going for the one contest, and if you want to chicken out of it, you're going to go for the Arkle, and would make that stronger. For me, it's just diluted the novice chasers just too much, because again, we really don't know what's going to happen. I like L'Empress as a horse though, and I saw him win at Exeter first time at fences when he had a relatively low handicap mark. Actually, he was only rated 128 at the time, and the fact Venetia was happy to blow that handicap mark at Ascot in a graduation chase. He was the worst in at the weights, I think, when he went for that 8-runner contest. He absolutely bolted up. We then saw how good he was at Cheltenham, which I think was key. We've seen him get around the track, nice bit of course form. And at Sandown, he never came off a bridle. The other horses just fell apart, but he kept on galloping up the hill. Brave Man's Game, I'm concerned. Bob Bollinger made him look slow when he ran at the festival last year, and then he got beat by a Hoy Senior at Aintree. He's been foot perfect over his obstacles this season. Small fields, four-runner contests. He's never really had that much pressure put to him. Pat's Fancy never really got him off a bridle last time, despite giving him a lot of weight. Grumpy Charlie, the ground was quick enough for him, and he had a bit of an interrupted prep. So while Brave Man's Game and the figures produced an absolutely devastating performance at Newbury off that marker 159, did he have to run to 159 to beat his two rivals? I'm not entirely convinced. So L'Empress, wherever Venetia goes, I'll be supporting him, even though I strongly respect Galopin Des Champs. I think in my own mind, Venetia might go wherever Willie doesn't go. So that might help her make her mind up, to be honest.
Yeah, I've read a quote saying from her, and I've written out here that says L'Empress does look like a 3-miler, and if he doesn't go up to 3 miles this month, you can be sure he'll be hitting it next season, which probably could be this month, because to avoid galloping the likes of Galopin Des Champs, she might not be one to go over to the likes of Ireland. She could something next season and keep him at this trip, but he definitely has the ability to. And Brave Man's Game has the ability to go either as well, but they're pretty certain this is where he will stay. And I just thought the performance at Newbury was pretty masterful, considering the weight he had to give away. And at Kempton, it wasn't exactly the right track for him. I think that he's just a much better jump of a fence than he was of a hurdle, and he just wasn't quite the full horse last year, and he really is this season. So I think he's Paul Nicholls' best chance of a winner. And at 11-5, he's going to be a lot shorter when they do declare Galopin Des Champs for the Turners, which I just get the feeling he will do. But maybe Willie Mullins is trying to keep us all guessing. Tom, what do you think, Willie Mullins? I mean, it's so impossible. We're going to be like this for the next few days, trying to guess what he's going to do. But where do you feel we'll end up seeing Galopin Des Champs?
I completely agree with the guys. I think this is the race for Galopin Des Champs. Now, he may go to the Turners, but I genuinely think he should run in this race. And if he does, he would be my selection, despite short odds. He's looked so good in 2 starts this year. When he stepped up to 3 miles at Punchestown last spring, he looked like a different horse compared to what we saw at Cheltenham Festival in the Martin Pipe. So I think Galopin Des Champs will win this race. I have jumping concerns about Hoyson. You're exactly like Ross said. He's very clumsy when he lands. L'Empress is a horse I saw at Sandown. He's very impressive. He's progressed right up through the ranks, and he's very talented as well. He could be a player in here. I just think Galopin Des Champs has a little bit more class. And Brave Man's Game, I've had this nutty theory since when he won at Newton Abbot at the start of the season, that the third last fence at Cheltenham is going to cause him serious problems, just as the race develops. Because he lands so heavy on his front legs, and that's obviously coming down the hill, I think he's going to have a bit of an issue at the third last. But I mean, I could be completely wrong. That's enough just to turn me off him. And even so, I still don't think he's as talented as Galopin Des Champs. So it's another one for the Irish, I'm afraid.
Well, we'll see. If Galloping Deschamps turns up, that completely changes the complexion. I feel like, you've obviously made you've both made a big case in running in this race. From what I keep reading, keep seeing from Willie Mullins, he's not going to send him there, guys. But we'll see. A few more days to wait yet, but confidence behind Galloping Deschamps should Willie Mullins listen to this podcast, which I'm sure he does.
Well, one of us has got Willie Mullins' phone number, Jess, haven't they?
One of us would not dare ever use that phone number. But we'll head on in. You still need to find out about my own horse, and that's hard enough as it stands, but we'll get to that. Right, we'll head on into the 250, the Coral Cup, run over 2 mile, 5 furlongs, and another completely ludicrous puzzle to solve, as we saw last year with the winner being at such a big price. But we've seen some splendid, well handicapped horses coming into this, and this is one of the races that I felt with the weights, it's so important to have a real look through the changes and the disparities. The weights of for the Irish horses are a big indicator of what the UK handicapper view them as, and State Man is one of them that's got quite a nice mark. He's 13-2. He's got some other options as well. Drop the Anchors 15-2 with Good Risk at All. St. Felician 17-2 with Unexpected Party, and Iron Maximus as well. Ross, as I said, this is one of the races which could, as we have discussed, the UK handicappers trying to sort of benefit the English, but actually it's been the irony is that we're going to end up with plenty more Irish horses than UK horses, making it harder for us because there's A, so many of them, and B, they're just rated better. So actually it's quite difficult to sort of find out and work out whether the best rated horses is, if that makes any sense. I just really struggled to see how it benefited our own horses. So I don't know if there is one in there from a UK perspective. How did you look at it and the weights and how it's changed to look to this race?
I mean, that's the issue, isn't it? There's going to be some really nicely handicapped UK horses, and they're just not going to get in. They're not going to make the cut. He's certainly, I think, been harder on the Irish this year. I know last year there's lots of 4s and 5s, but this year, just look at his stacks that are getting £7. I mean, £7 is a lot, even if they have been clever and got themselves well handicapped. So again, I've looked. Tom will know this one. Don Levant, he's off 142. He's done me well all season. He's run solid races every single time. He does need luck in running, particularly in a big runner Coral Cup. Isabel Williams can have to weave her way through, but she's got much, much better at it. As you would expect with practice, the more she does it, the better she gets. He was pretty unlucky last time at Kempton. He sort of got stuck in a pocket and rallied home. 2 mile 5 in Cheltenham, I think, will suit him well. And he's off 142. He's not been harshly dealt with by the handicapper at all this season. And then the other one that is just interesting because he hasn't had any Irish tax applied to him, and I don't know whether he's a likely runner or not, is Colonel Mustard. Off 140, he's run really well behind John Bon at Ascot. He ran another solid race behind Sir Gerhard at Leopardstown, both times looking like he just lacks a bit of tactical speed, but he keeps at it. His pedigree is interesting. McPhee hasn't really done it as a sire, but the few that he has got do tend to have stamina. But the Dam was just a 10 furlong horse on the flat, so it's a bit of a question mark. I hope they try it, and if they do, I'd be interested in him. But off 140, he's had nothing harshly done to him by the UK handicapper, so I think that makes him of interest.
Ross was an absolute 101 shot to put up Don Levant. I knew that was going to happen.
There's another Zanzical in there as well. But yeah, Don Levant, who ran in the race last year, and I think Isabel Williams will have we'll have that still fresh in her memory on how he ran. But it definitely is, as you said, is getting to know the horse better and how to really come late really with him. He's such a classic player. Colonel Mustard, as you said, what the hasn't moved. I can't work out how he's not moved for getting the closest to Sir Gerhard than many others have been able to, especially some horses in behind him have gone up in the weights. I'm not necessarily sure if they were actually thinking about Cheltenham, but now that they've got their mark, they're probably a little bit more keen to give it a go. And we shall see if that form with Sir Gerhard and John Bond can materialise. He's 16-1, perhaps based on the fact that, as Ross said, he's not moved. He's 140 for this race. Tom, there's a friend of yours who won the Moor Battle Hurdle. I know he's got the county as an option as well, Cormier. You imagine he might go for that as opposed to the Coral Cup?
Yes, I think so. Back in 2019, We Have a Dream won the Moor Battle, then went to the County Hurdle and finished second. So I imagine that's the route for Cormier. That's why I didn't include him in my selections for this race. But again, I think it's going to be an Irish winner, Jess.
And so what's the Irish bit of form? Because last year hindsight is a brilliant thing, because you look at Heaven Help Us, you look at what she had done in previously, and she'd been kept fresh. She had good handicap experience at Leopardstown. That's the kind of route I was sort of looking for. Have you found something like that?
Hopefully. I think this is another plot job kind of race. You know, JP McManus with some of his handicap hurdlers, well, most of his handicap hurdlers in Ireland are plotted for one race. Drop the Anchor is the selection. And he, throughout his career, hasn't been the most prolific, but when he's won, he's been well backed. So I'll be looking to see some money from him on the day. Last time out, he ran an okay race despite never being put into the event. To me, it didn't look like they were trying to win. But there you go, finished fifth in a big field. He entered last year's county hurdle off a mark of 1:46 after winning a Leopardstown handicap of £16 higher. And he ran a great race. He finished seventh and he was staying on powerfully up the hill. He was only beating just over 3 lengths, but he bungled the second last and would have been a lot closer if he jumped that fluently at a crucial stage that was as well. He was given so much to do, as I say, over 2 miles last time, the step up and triple suit. He's £3 lower than when he ran in the county hurdle 12 months ago. I think he's well treated. This is going to be his target. If he jumps better, then Drop the Anchor is the one for me. Although this is a race where I'll be having 4 or 5 bets before the race, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't blame you. But the shrewd JP McManus team, they love to get a win in a race like this. And currently 15-2. That's probably a reflection on the connections and looking back at some sort of eye-catching performances, especially at Leopardstown last time out. I'll come to you, James, next. As I said, we've talked about weights, we've talked about horses that have been, well treated and that haven't been. Is there anything that caught your eye?
The best handicap horse at the festival was Good Risk at All, but I'm not quite sure he's actually going to get it. Normally he would have 137, but he's quite low down on the entry stage at the moment. He couldn't have been more impressive when he beat Christopher Wood. The penny finally clicked for him at the 4th attempt over hurdles, and he actually got beat all 3 times previously, finishing second. He was a very classy bumper horse. He's won at the track. 137. He's very, very well handicapped. He's got the Martin Pipe option as well, but I'm not, because of that Irish tax, as Roscoe likes to use, he might well miss it, which would be a shame. He's very well handicapped, but he could probably get in the Martin Pipe. If he didn't get in, I'd stick with a British horse, and that is the Skelton Runner, who impressed me at Ascot as well. Both of them won nicely at Ascot handicaps. Unexpected party, 53 days before Cheltenham. He travelled like an absolute dream on the inside, and when he asked to go, he went very, very readily. He went up £12. He went up £2 more than Good Risk at All, which, if the 2 do get in, I'll be with Sam Thomas's horse. But if not, Dan Skelton also got a bit of a chance. He had too much to do at Cheltenham back in November when he finished second, but you could see he handled the track quite nicely. I just felt he is a progressive handicapper, and the Skeltons, they've got a cracking record in the Cheltenham handicap hurdles. So I wouldn't be ruling him out each way, but I just hope we get to see Good Risk at All at Cheltenham, because he is very well treated.
Yeah, he's number 66. And there are plenty of horses are doubly, triply entered, even Martin Pipes, county hurdles as well. So it'll be harsh if he couldn't get in, but it's just as you said, as a result of the way that the handicapping system has worked this season. So we'll see if he does. He is 15-2 as it stands. Unexpected party 17-2. I'm going to throw in Iron Maximus in here, who, when I had the opportunity of speaking to Nicky Henderson and interviewing him, he really hadn't thought much about the idea of a handicap. He was thinking of running him in the Ballymore, which he's still priced up for. But I think with the rating that he has got of 134, it's a pretty nice gift for a horse that I think is a lot better than what he's shown. His second to Hillcrest last time is looking pretty decent. He won at Newbury pretty impressively in December, and the form of that race is working out well. I saw Headlaw, whose fourth win just a couple of days ago, in fact, to frank it a little bit. And I just think he's got quite a nice profile for a race like this. So I would hope that they're going to give this a bit of a gamble at 17-2 as opposed to giving the Ballymore a shot. Right, we'll head into the feature race of the day, probably the race of the week, the Champion Chase. 3:30, Shishkin, Energumene face each other again. We've had a few ifs and doubts about the form of Energumene, but it sounds like he's okay. I heard from Tony Bloom's racing manager in a podcast that he had a stone bruise, which is not ideal, but he's sound now. Chachon Poursoir, there's been some big words coming out of Willie Mullins saying that he would want to ride him, but it's all going to be about who Paul Townend chooses for the confidence behind the Willie Mullins selection. Nubia Negra for Dan and Harry Skelton. He's an interesting one at 25-2. But Shishkin, he's been here, he's done it before at Cheltenham. He's essentially back at the track that will serve him best. It will essentially just be about, how we go out and get Nubia Negra beat. Go out and get Shishkin beat. Tom, come to you first on thoughts on how this race will pan out. As we've seen Shishkin, Energumene at Ascot, we really enjoyed that spectacle. How do you see this race developing?
Well, there's so much speed in the race again with Energumene, Editor de Giets in there, Captain Guinness can go forward, Put the Kettle On can go forward, All Mankind still in the entries. There are plenty of horses that want to go forward. There's going to be a strong pace. Who's that going to suit? Shishkin. This race has a very similar makeup to the Champion Hurdle, with Honeysuckle being a short price favourite, Shishkin being a short price favourite here. And then you're looking at the other horses. There aren't many each way alternatives, I think, that one, you can be confident on how they're going to perform, or two, represent any value. I mean, Energumene is clearly second best on form. And then after that, you're kind of playing for third if Energumene runs his race. I just think Shishkin's going to win this race. He's worth putting in combination bet, maybe with Galopin de Champs if he runs, or maybe if you want to put it in with a couple of horses on Tuesday. But he's 11 from 12 in his career. He's unbeaten at Cheltenham. I mean, how can you really take him on? He's the best horse in the race too.
Yeah, for me, it's not really a betting race at all. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy to see how it develops. I think Envoyland's interesting at 35-1. It's a huge price for a horse that had literally the world at his feet only this time last year. And if it's down to the fact that Henry de Bromhead has just not got the key to him yet, and coming back to 2 miles will help him, then I think that's a nice little bit of each way value. Ross, how do you feel it will play out? Is it a kind of race that you want to get too stuck into from a betting perspective?
Not at all. I entirely understand there'll be plenty of people that think 5-6 Shishkin is value. I've been around horses long enough to know that I'd want 5-6 about most of them cantering to the start properly. So it's a watching race. Chacun Poursoir is the interesting angle, not so much in that I can see him winning it, but I think it does just add an extra dimension for Nico to think in that he's not only got to cover Energumene, he's got to cover Chacun Poursoir as well. And I think they'll make the running with Chacun Poursoir. And I just wondered whether, having tried to gallop the finish out of Shishkin last time at Ascot, whether they would perhaps try, and so it was Kempton, wasn't it, where they would perhaps try and sit behind Shishkin and have one run at him at the last. I think it would be futile. Shishkin will have to jump a bit better, and I'm sure going left hand he will do, but I wouldn't just assume it. So the one horse that I thought was interesting, if you wanted to have a bet in the race now, is Nubia Negra, because he's definitely going to run here. You could possibly end up with a situation where if you back anti-post, you're getting 3 places about a horse, in a race that perhaps they'll only be paying 2 places on the day. And it could just end up being a pace collapse. He'll come from off the pace, he'll finish quick. That might be an angle, but it's a race to watch. Make a cup of tea before it, grab another beer, sit and watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah, look, I think Nubia Negra is interesting because if Harry Skelton could have it again last year, he would do with all the team trying to take that race back. And he's said that, but it's a completely different race to the Champion Chase of last year with Put the Kettle On. It's got much more depth. Chachin Poursois, we saw him just unable, for plenty of different reasons, he just couldn't turn up at Sandown for the Tingle Creek. He was beaten at Cheltenham behind Put the Kettle On and Nube Negra last year. I see a lot of negatives with him, James, but I like the Willie Mullins rhetoric, and it adds a bit of another dimension. They don't want anyone to forget about this what they still perceive as a superstar in their eyes. But I think it's a lot of smoke, and I can't see the fire actually happening because Shishkin, I think, it's got it all covered, really.
Yeah, well, I felt Paul Townend gave Energumene the perfect ride at Ascot, and Shishkin still beat him. If I was Paul Townend, I'd be riding Chachin Poursois purely because I know that Energumene can't beat him, and they do feel that for whatever reason we've not seen Chachin Poursois at his best in the UK. And obviously he had one trip over the water and he didn't actually run. He got cast in the box or something happened and he was injured on the morning of the race. So I would, if I was Paul, I'd be riding Chachin Poursois. I don't think Shishkin will get beat. Interesting, like Tom says, for the first three, I'm more with Nube Negra each way in the fact that he probably should have won last year. Obviously, it was a much weaker Charmin Chase, but he's coming here fresh, likes the track. He was good in November when he won at the meeting. And Chachin Poursois wouldn't surprise me if he disappointed again crossing the water. Energumene, it wouldn't surprise me if he disappointed. The market was very weak with him earlier on this week. Last time was the first time he ever had a race. He'd always been on the bridle. Nothing had really got him under pressure, and he might not have taken it very well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Energumene absolutely bombed out. And Shishkin had a hard race last time. Look, I think he's got an absolutely fantastic chance. He wouldn't be my number one banker of the odds-on favourites at the meeting. But Nube Negra each way, Rossby makes a great point back in now, because you're definitely going to get 3 places. As there is a chance you're going to get a very small field. But for me, Nube Negra each way is a good angle into a race where Shishkin holds all the aces.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say. It could just cut up this. We could get less than 8 runners, but I think there's about 18 at the moment as it stands, but there's plenty of water to go on the bridge. But Nube Negra at 25-2, if anything, it's not really a betting race for me at all, as I said, but I do think Envoy Elan is a huge price for the horse that he can be, but it's a tentative selection. It's definitely a race to watch and enjoy. The 410, the cross-country chase, again, personally, not a race that I get overexcited from a betting perspective. It's always great fun to watch, and this race, the storyline about this is all about Tiger Roll. As we know, not going to the Grand National. This will be his last race, as we've been told. He will retire after this. It's whether he can come back and win again. He was just dynamite last year. It was sad that no one was there to see it. So it would be a lovely story. It would be a lovely aspect of Cheltenham if he can do it again. But it's a race where there's plenty there, younger horses essentially with better profiles that could upset him. The likes of Prengard in the J. Madness colours, and J. Madness has got quite a few who'll be up against him. And Ross, I don't know a huge amount about them. You might know a little bit more in terms of what Tiger Roll will have to tackle this time around.
I don't think he's got to tackle a huge amount, has he? I mean, Prengard has got a huge reputation. He's unbeaten in cross-country races. I wouldn't worry a jot about his 18th place finish last time in a 2-mile hurdle race. But my understanding is he turned up in Ireland as fat as a house, and they're struggling to get him fit, which is why that run was so important. Now, if that run has brought him on enough, I think he's a very real danger to Tiger Roll. And I just think Tiger Roll's a very short price for a horse that we don't know how good he is, because he only ever runs 2 races a year where he's fully tuned up and fully putting his best foot forward. And probably the less said about that, the better. But it would be lovely to see Tiger Roll win, because he's a grand little horse. Prengard is definitely the danger. Easylander, my understanding is he's gone to John Joe because they've got the pool, because he's becoming tricky to train, and he just looks completely fed up with it. I mean, again, okay, he's running over hurdles and that's not his thing, but he didn't raise a gallop in 2 efforts now. So I couldn't have him on my mind at all. But then you look through it and say, okay, what is going to beat them? And they're all 130, 140 horses at best. So it's a race. It's the one day of the week where I'll do the school run, because I can watch this on my phone stood outside the school gate. I don't need a TV for it. And then I've done my good deed for the week.
Yeah, you hope the school run takes a while, because this race can go on a little bit. It's Delta Works, the fascinating one. I know he's 11-2, but he is a former Grade 1 Savills Chase winner. But he's a little bit long in the tooth at this stage, which you could probably say the same for a few of them. I found it very difficult to assess. Tom, any big opinions for this?
No, nothing big. I like Ross, don't like the way Tiger Roll's campaigned. I think he's the horse for the public, but the public aren't allowed to love him because the owners are thinking of a word to use that I'm allowed to use, not using him the way they should. They should use Tiger Roll by running him in the races that he should be running in, e.g. the Grand National and the cross country, and let him run in other races where we can see how good he is. He's 12-year-old now. He's a very short price. I hate all this furore about him. Anyway, I won't be punting him here. I won't be having a bet in the race. If I was, it would be Shady Operator for Ender Bolger, who won this race in 2016 with Josie's Order. Often targets this race, always has a load of runners in here. I don't think he's got very many talented horses in this year's field, albeit the French recruit, Prengard, I don't know too much about. But Shady Operator is 2 from 3 over in cross-country races, 2 from 3 at Punchestown over the banks. Would have won last time, but the ground went against him. The better the ground, the better his chance. He's a reasonable price, whereas Tiger Roll's very short. But again, it's not a race I'm very excited about, Jess.
Fair enough. One question I was going to have to Ross is Diesel Dalier, because Richard Bandy is a trainer that you've talked about in the past on this podcast. He's also come over from Emmanuel Cléo in France. He's won around the cross-country course at Cheltenham. He's my selection based on that, really, because I quite liked his profile. And I just felt that maybe if he wasn't with Richard Bandy, he might be shorter than 16-1. Why have you not put him up, knowing what you know about the trainer and his French form?
You make a good point about horses for courses, and of course this is unique, but that was the handicap version of this. It's a completely different situation now off the level weights that we have here, so it's not for me at all. The one thing I'd say about Delta Work is I can't think of a horse winning this and their first go. And yes, they come in school, but you watch Tiger Roll's first try at this. I think he came in the October or November meeting, and he was very sketchy, and he'd been over in school twice. So Delta Work first run in this level of race wouldn't be for me at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks about a few of them, James. Have you got any confidence behind anything here?
Well, I'd absolutely written him off last year, Tiger Roll. I thought he had no hope whatsoever on the back of that disaster of a run in the Boyne Hurdle, the race he'd won previously in 2020. Tiger Roll's been announced he's going to be retired after this race, so I think Gordon is going to have him absolutely ace perfect. And the fact that they're going to run Delta Work, I don't think they'd really want Delta Work to be that good a chance to defeat Tiger Roll. So I don't expect Delta Work, like Ross says, it's not easy taking to these unique obstacles for the first time. He might be the future Tiger Roll going forward because he's not quite good enough in the open company anymore. But Gordon, when the weights came out for National, Gordon didn't seem too nonplussed by what weight he got given. I think he's actually in still pretty good form. It is the O'Learys that are taking that decision to retire him. I think if it was Gordon's decision, he would be running in a National, and we know he comes good at this time of year. Easy Land, Ross took the words out of my mouth. He has barely raised a canter in 2 hurdles for John Joe O'Neill, and it's been pretty shocking to see him that slowly. And like I say, there's no handicap option for the cross country. He's just looked totally unenthusiastic, and that's interesting, the fact that he's been hard to train over in France, and that might have been why he's come over to Jack Dawes to use the pool and the facilities available. And also I like Ross's little information about Prengard being a tad tubby when he came over to Ireland, because the race looks absolutely set up perfectly for Tiger Roll, and in a tricky day too, I think he could be a cracking bet really in a race which just lacks that strength and depth, and doesn't interest a lot of people. But everyone will be delighted if we see Tiger Roll back in a winner's enclosure and going out on a high.
We'll head on into the Grand Annual, another good betting race as always, over 2 miles. Tom, I'll come to you first. Just with that Buddy Rich link to your old friend, Third Time Lucky.
As I mentioned in the Tuesday section of this Cheltenham podcast, if Sublime was to run in this race instead of the Arkle, he would be my pick in here. But I'm going to treat it as if he's running in the Arkle and not the Grand Annual. Therefore, I came down on a horse called Embittered, who's a bona fide Grade 1 bumper horse and novice hurdler. He finished third in the 2020 county off a mark of 146. And then he fell when going sweetly in this race last year. Now, everyone fancied him last year, punted into 9-2 favourite, travelling down the back straight, pulling a cart with Rachel Blackmore. Unfortunately, he fell before we could see how close he was going to get. It was too far out to judge if he was going to win or not. But at that point, you wouldn't want to be on any other horse. He's had a very busy autumn, which was perhaps surprising, given you'd suggest that a leading connections would want to target a race at the Cheltenham Festival. But he's been freshened up since. He's won twice this campaign, including the Grade 3 at Punchestown. He's probably needed his comeback recently, and he was in at the deep end anyway, but his mark has dropped right down. He's a double figure price. I think he's got a great chance in this race. He's kind of been overlooked, whereas last year he was sent off 9-2 favourite. So Embittered for me, or Course Sublime if he runs in this race.
Ross, come to you next. Anything that massively stood out?
Red Rookie would interest me if he gets in, but again, he should get in, but he just couldn't be certain of it. One that will certainly get in, and I think he's been aimed at the race, is Castle Paddy. He was 15 lengths behind Dunvegan at Fairyhouse last time. I'm not sure he was given the fullest of efforts to get closer, and he was giving him £9. So effectively 6 lengths, £6 inferior. Buddy Rich, who is the Twitter horse for the Grand Annual, if ever there's been one, was beaten 7 lengths behind Dunvegan, but he was only getting and he was getting £1. So he's about £8 inferior. The differential in the price is massive. Sky Pirate won this off 154 last year. Castle Paddy have to do it off 155, but again, he's another one that hasn't had his mark altered. I think he's a strong player in a very strong race.
James, this is the kind of race that we've been watching, these 2 mile, 2.5 mile races at Cheltenham over this season, where we know the UK form, but I suppose we keep a big eye on the UK form on this podcast, Irish form, how it matches up. But I just thought there were quite a lot of nice UK horses that have kept their own weight. They've not been moved. That could perform well here. What did you think?
Yeah, I was actually intrigued by Tom's comment on Embittered, because I hadn't really put him into my calculation. I've kept with the British horses. The one I really like is Brave Cheska, but I'm slightly concerned in the fact that at Chepstow on the comeback on the undulating track, he ran an absolute shocker. And it's generally been flat tracks apart from the downhill where there's no fences at Warwick. And also he didn't run that well at Carlisle. So if he handles an undulating track, I still think he's well handicapped for Phoenicia Williams, and he might end up going in the Arkle anyway. But one we know that handles Cheltenham, before midnight, he won the handicap in the October meeting very, very nicely for Sam Thomas. He then went on a bit of a sequence. He won that Ascot, beating the specialist Amelia Gold at that track. And then they set him right up in grade. He wasn't disgraced behind Shishkin, beating 20 lengths in the Desert Orchid. And then Fernando Savola, a horse who's very progressive. I think he's heading towards the champion chase. He ran him to a length off today's marker 148. Fernando Savola looked well treated on that occasion at Doncaster, and he gave him a real race. So for me, he's overpriced. He's neat to angle into the race, and I wouldn't rule out Sky Pirate. He would have been trained specifically for this contest. His runs this year, 7, 7, 4, 4, and 4 have been the number of runners in the races. He loves a nice big field to sneak through, and he hasn't had that since last year's Grand Annual win. So he might well run much better, despite being £4 high this time around.
I like Editor de Geet. I will interesting to see what the Gary Moore team decide to do with him, because he is in the champion chase, but I don't think he's got a terrible mark still, official mark of 153. It's on the higher end, but I think he's definitely a fringe horse. He's definitely could be a graded performer, but he hasn't tried one yet this season. Although he was a good winner of a Grade 3 handicap at Aintree last year. We'll be fascinated to see if Josh Moore gets on board. He was his partner in crime last season, and now he's back from injury. The Gary Moore team have just been flying. I just do really like his profile for this race, and he's 11-1. And the other horse is Amarillo Sky for the Tizzards, and he was back to his very best at Newbury last time out. I don't think that was any fluke. He's up considerably in the handicap by another £9. I think he could still be on the right side of the handicapper for a race like this. So he's 11-1 as well. So this is a really good race, really good betting heat, this. And I'm looking forward to the Grand Annual, which is the penultimate race of the day at Cheltenham on day 2. The final race is another one that has been had a lot of hype, a lot of talk about, the Champion Bumper. We run over 2.5 miles a furlong. It's all been about the son of Quevega, Facile Vega, who just created a huge impression at Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival last time, in the similar style to Kilcrut, really, winning in such by such a distance. It's 6-5 favourite currently. American Mike is 13-5. Redemption Day is 11-2. Mercury 17-2. And I think there's a bit of a recency bias for Facile Vega, hence why the price is so short. I think American Mike is a very, very nice sort. We just have not seen him. He's just gone down the Envoy Land route, and Gordon Elliott has kept him fresh for this race. But Tom, do you think that Facile Vega is the real deal? I just can't. A bumper horse coming into this at the price of 6-5. I just think I think it's very, very short. As much as he could be the next best thing, it's a very short price with a horse that lacks so much experience.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, he is a very short price, and this probably isn't a race I'll be punting in. My selection, however, is who I think is the most likely winner, which is Facile Vega. As I say, I'm not a massive fan of each way punting, especially in a bumper where we hardly know anything about any of these horses. It will kind of be a guessing game, if I put up something at a bigger price. My main aim when I look at a bumper is to find the horse who I think is going to be the best bumper horse, rather than 1, the most ability, or 2, the sharpest prospect. You need a horse that's ready to win on the flat. If I was to look at horses who I think have got the most ability, Mercury would be right at the top of my shortlist, but I think he's going to be a much better novice hurdler than he is a bumper horse. Facile Vega at the Dublin Racing Festival was so impressive. Now, I know Kilcrut did exactly the same 12 months ago and was beaten at the Cheltenham Festival, but he was beaten by a good horse in Sir Gerhard. And he ran a very nice race. He probably got outdone by the way he was ridden. It would have been very close to the wire otherwise. William Mullins has 9 of the top 17 in the market. He's got a huge stranglehold on this race. Trained 4 of the first 5 home back in 2018 when Relegate won. I just think it's going to be another Mullins fest, and Facile Vega will be the best of them.
James, what do you think in terms of this race, considering I just keep thinking about Kilcrut, the Gerhard from a couple of years ago, and how Rachel Blackmore timed it so well in a race which is so unusual for the festival. It's the flat race. It's to play into this. How does Patrick Mullins go out and win on Facile Vega?
Yeah, it's interesting because the flat jockeys used to riding it quite regularly, didn't they? Jamie Spencer and Passaro going back along, Charlie Swan, Kieran Fallon, etc. Used to have a good go in it. Patrick hasn't always got it right in the bumper, and I think it's very hard in some ways because there's so many good ones from William Mullins. You're not really just narrowing it down to 1 or 2 potential runners. There's 5 or 6 there that might not have shown their true hand when they've won their race very, very easily. But Facile Vega looked so good at Dublin Festival last time, the way quick and clear of Sandor Clegane. But against that, they've talked up American Mike as a machine for a long time now, and they didn't seem too fussed watching that back. For me, it's going to be a cracking race to watch. With Quevega's record, you'd imagine she might have transferred that to her son at Cheltenham. He's certainly bred to win at the track, and he did look very good last time. I'm in agreement with TC for once. I won't be having a bet in this race, and he's my selection, but it's not a strong this will win. It's going to be an absolutely cracking race. And even in the yard, they do think Redemption Day isn't that far behind Facile Vega, and he won pretty easily. And Mercury, Tom mentioned the breeding, as a stallion. Mutahir can get some quite decent flat horses as well, never mind jumpers. So he's got plenty of speed. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. But yeah, from watching them on the track so far, none of them have really had a hard test. They've all won so easily. American Mike in particular, 17 lengths. We don't know what they're going to find when push comes to shove, and jockeyship, as you mentioned, could play a key. But I'm looking forward to watching it on the finale for day 2.
Yeah, I've got a lot of faith in American Mike and Jamie Codd, who just waxes lyrics about this horse. And as I said, I think recency bias is going to make him a bit of value on the day. He's 13-5 as it stands. he is my hope for Marla to finally get his first winner at the Cheltenham Festival, being by him. And hopefully it'll be a good day with Journey with me earlier on. But Ross, I'll come to you finally. Do you think Facile Vega is the right Willie Mullins horse that we should be focusing on?
I think you're spot on with this recency bias. He's clearly got a very good crop of bumper horses this year, but at Christmas, Redemption Day was the one that caught my imagination. I just thought the way he quickened up was quite something. He'll arrive there fresh. He will arrive there with a distinct lack of experience, but he just looked to me like he had a lot of speed and a lot of gears. And TC mentions finding the best bumper horse. I think he looks like a quicker horse. Facile Vega, don't get me wrong, looks an awesome horse, but he looks like a strong galloping stayer in the making. Redemption Day looked quick to me. By probably the only stallion at the moment that can sort of challenge Walk in the Park for the sort of title of rising star in Blue Brazil, who's already got a good couple of winners at the Cheltenham Festival. So it'll be interesting to see who Patrick chooses. I wouldn't think it's a completely foregone conclusion yet that he rides
Really?
Facile Vega. I've seen a couple of ways he's been very quick when talking about Facile Vega to mention Redemption Day and a couple of others. Now maybe he's doing his political bit for the other owners in the yard, but I think Redemption Day is as good as Facile Vega for certain.
Yeah, you wouldn't mind being Paul Townend waiting for Patrick's decision, which is always unusual. But I think he was riding Facile Vega during the press day, which was it was just a bit of a hint to me. And I think he's got a big soft spot for this horse. So we shall see. We'll see how the jockey bookings are really crucial. And actually, Willie Mullins has said he's really put a lot of emphasis on what Paul Townend is choosing for a lot of his race planning and race decisions. So that's really crucial. A big week for Paul Townend. That's a cracker to end the day at Cheltenham. But really looking through a lot of the races on day two, could be a bit of a favourites day, and I wouldn't be surprised if something like a Facile Vega, Shishkin, Tiger Roll, Brave Man's Game, the Gerhard, all five of those coming in, and it'd be a bit of a favourites day outside of the handicaps. But we've had a look through day two, and before we get to the naps and our next best, don't forget the offer live on Thursday. Deposit £10 with SBK, get £50 in free bets. New customers only, 18 plus and overs. So a great offer ahead of the Cheltenham Festival, ahead of the naps and next best. So we'll come to Ross first.
So the nap is a weak enough nap. The second day is not a day I've got a huge amount of strong fancies, but I think Redemption Day is being widely overlooked amongst all the furore about Facile Vega. So he's the nap, and the next best is Castle Grace Paddy in the Grand Annual.
Well, big price next best for Ross there. Always interesting. Tom Collins.
Well, my nap is Galopin de Champ in the Brown Advisory. If he goes there, you seem very confident he's going to the Turners, but I think the Brown Advisory is the race for him. If he doesn't run in the Brown Advisory, my nap will be my current next best, which is Journey with Me in the Ballymore. Antipost Plunge, I really fancy him. Hopefully, Sir Gerhard doesn't prove to be better.
James, in a day which we've said is really tricky at best, but also there could be plenty of winning favourites. What are your naps and your next best?
Yeah, Journey with Me's stuffed if Sir Gerhard is in the Ballymore, isn't he really? But that would be my nap at day one or day two, whoever really sends him. And I think Tiger Roll, I think he's going to be primed for the cross country. So he's my next best. I just think with Roscoe's comments, actually, that really boosted the confidence, because Easy Land and JP's other horse, it's not what you want to be hearing. One's a bit fat and one's not moving very well. And they were two of potentially the main opposition. So Tiger Roll, 12-year-old, I think he might just bring the house down in the cross country for the next best.
So for me, not the most inspiring selections. Nap will be Shishkin, because I think that at Cheltenham will bring out the best in him, and he's not really, I get the impression, hasn't really turned a hair since his win in the Clarence House. And I think this is it's just going to be a race for the ages. Let's hope they all turn up. And next best will be American Mike. Really like this horse for the bumper for Gordon Elliott and for Jamie Codd. So that is day two of our SBK Cheltenham Festival previews. We'll be back for day three and for day four.